Welcome to today's webinar, Attract More Funding, Why Demographics Matter. I'm Yvonne Sims, Network Engagement Manager based in Atlanta, and I'm joined today by Winnie Chan and Sarah Hassan. We'll be speaking today about why demographics matter. We're also joined by Yara Coker, Joyce Chen, and Dorothy Ho. They're in the background talking to you, supporting our webinar for today. Today's agenda will cover using your Candid profile to showcase your work. Also, how adding demographics can lead to more funding, which is really interesting. I can't wait to hear. Tips on how to collect that information. We know it can be sensitive and different and something that some people might be a little uncomfortable with. So we want to make sure we give you tips on how to collect it and what we've done and what we've seen in practice. And then easy steps on how to add to your profile. If you don't know Candid, we can tell you that in 2019, Foundation Center and GuideStar joined forces to create one single organization called Candid. Together, we have over 88 years of experience in the nonprofit sector. Every year, millions of nonprofits spend trillions of dollars around the world. Candid finds out where that money comes from, where it goes, and why it matters. We believe that an effective social sector is critical for a thriving society, and we believe in the importance of solutions for the sector by the sector. With Candid, nonprofits, foundations, donors, and the public can all be on the same page. Through research, collaboration, and training, Candid connects people who want to change the world with the resources they need to do it. So you probably know Foundation Center and GuideStar, and as I said, we've combined, and together we can do so much more. I think we're pretty much ready to hand over to Winnie so we can learn a little bit more about what we're talking about today specifically. So I'm handing it over to you, Winnie.
Great, thank you. I'm also gonna turn on my camera so we can kind of see each other and put a face to this presentation as well. So give me a moment to do that. All right, hello everyone. Really great to have you all here. I'm so glad that many of you have heard of us before and have an active seal of transparency. I'm here today to talk a little bit more about the Candid profile itself, as well as the focusing on the demographic data section and sharing a little bit more about that. If you don't know me, my name is Winnie Chan, and I am the product manager of our profile update tool and for our SEALs program. I'll first kind of go through and share a little bit about what a Candid profile is. A Candid profile is a place for your organization to basically share a very complete picture of your work, from all of your most basic information like your mission statement, your website, your address, up to some more detailed information, including your program level information, your metrics, and also the people that you're trying to serve. So we have all of that encapsulated in one place. And having this profile shows your commitment to transparency about your work because it's available publicly on our website. Now, a lot of our users like to share their Candid profiles with potential funders as a live report to show the impact that they've made. And the profile also gives donors very helpful information to guide their giving decisions. And you can share all of that preemptively before they ask. Power giving platforms such as Facebook and donor advised funds also get this data from us. And so if you see a Facebook fundraiser and there's a little bit more information, you know that this data actually comes from what a nonprofit has shared on GuideStar.org and on their Candid profile. One feature that we're going to especially highlight today is the ability to also now share how your organization represents the community you serve by sharing demographic data. We know that more and more funders are asking for demographic makeup of your organization, and each funder has a different level of information that they're asking for sometimes, or they want you to slice and dice your data slightly differently, leaving a lot of nonprofits to fill out a lot of different forms in order to get the funding that they need. So what we've been busy doing this year is launching this Demographics via Candid campaign. We are starting a national campaign to create the single source for funders to get demographic information through your Candid profile. And we've been working with a lot of different funders that we'll talk a little bit more about in a minute, but funders are already looking at your profile to help guide their decision making. It's only right that they come here to also see your demographic data and be able to get it from one single source. The benefits to sharing your demographics on your profile is, as I mentioned, it saves you a lot of time to just upload it in one place and share that with each of your funders. It also lets other funders who stumble upon your profile be able to see the makeup of your organization and get intrigued by the data that you share. And finally, it does show your commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion by having that information publicly available. And a fun tip here is that you can share your full profile to funders using a unique shareable link that you are able to share to funders, anyone who wants to know a little bit more about your organization, and use that as that live report. This is what the demographic data looks like on your profile. I'll mention that earlier this year, we've made some updates after conversations with funders and doing some research in the field and partnering with a consulting firm to make sure that all of our data is the most up-to-date and represent how funders want to see this data represented. So we made a couple updates to the race and ethnicity category specifically. Earlier I mentioned that we've been partnering with a lot of different partners to get this up and running. Here are some of the foundations that we're working with that is a big supporter of the Demographics via Candid campaign. And as mentioned earlier as well, we also share this data with donor advised funds, various giving platforms, and grants management software. So truly, if you update your data with on your Candid profile, this information can be sent to so many places, allowing you to be visible to so many different other organizations at a simple glance. I've said a lot about the benefits of this single source, but I want you to hear it from someone who's been kind of on the ground doing this work for us, for Candid, working with funders, sharing our demographic data with our funders to get the grants that we need. So I would like to welcome Zara to talk a little bit more about the tips on how to collect organizational demographic data.
Thank you. As Winnie mentioned, I'm Zara Hassan. I'm a development manager here at Candid. I've been with Candid for about 8 years now, so I've had to fill out many demographic data surveys as part of grant applications over the years. And it's been really cool to see how our own process for collecting this data internally has evolved and how making small tweaks to the way that you collect that data can really help you report on it. So today I'm going to talk about tips for designing a demographic data survey. I'll highlight a few best practices, how to get your staff to complete the survey, and finally why it's so useful to collect this data. So first, let's dig into survey design. My number one tip is don't reinvent the wheel. There's so many resources available, and it's really easy to feel overwhelmed when you're trying to start something from scratch. So luckily, there's experts in the field who've already done the heavy lifting. We worked with Change Philanthropy when designing our demographic data survey on the Candid profile to ensure that our questions are aligning with existing data standards. And as Winnie mentioned, we also realized that this work is always evolving. So we've incorporated feedback from people who use the Candid profile to update the way that we ask the questions. So we have a sample demographic survey available for you to refer to when you're designing your survey, which I believe is linked in as a handout here. I found that I personally found that this data collected and using the questions on here is really comprehensive without being overwhelming. So when funders ask the question, it's really easy to fill out that information. So for example, under the race and ethnicity category, we've got Asian/Asian American and Hawaiians, Native Hawaiian/Pacific Islander as two separate identities. So if funders ask for it as separate identities, we can fill that out. If they ask for it as a single identity, we can simply add those together. It's much easier to add those two identities together as opposed to asking a question too broadly and then having to slice them apart. So you can use our sample survey as a template when designing your survey. I've also found it's really helpful to have definitions of key terms available because not everyone's familiar with the exact definition of terms you're going to be using when you're doing a demographic data survey. So having that shared language really helps people understand what they're filling out and how they're answering the questions. Pick a survey tool that's easy to use and something that your staff is familiar with. You want to make sure that it's easy for you to collect this data, but also for the staff to fill it out. But just be mindful that it's sensitive data, so you want to make sure that the tool that you're using to collect it allows you to record responses anonymously. At Candid, we've been relying on SurveyMonkey to do this and have found that this tool meets our needs, but I will flag that we use a paid version of it and I'm not familiar with the free version, but just to plug if you want to explore SurveyMonkey. And finally, make sure that you're setting your survey up such that it's serving its purpose. So what I've seen from filling these surveys out is almost always they want the number of responses to match the number of staff you have. And we've actually made this mistake many years ago when collecting data internally, where we asked people to just select as many identities as they identified with. And we ended up with way more responses than we had staff. So you'll see in the sample demographics survey, it accounts for that, where you can now have the option to like select multiracial or multi-ethnic, or prefer to identify with another race or ethnicity. And then I've also seen in a number of surveys, they want to see that demographic data broken out by the role at the organization. So CEO, senior staff, board members. So you can do that with that same template. And surveying these folks separately makes it really easy for you to fill out your questionnaires when you come across them. Next slide, please. Thank you. So here's 5 demographic survey best practices. Don't guess, always ask. This one's really important. You never want to assume someone's identity. So if you don't get a response, categorize it as unknown. Don't try to figure out what someone would identify as. Make all parts of your survey voluntary. You want to make sure that people feel as comfortable sharing information as much information as they would like to. So allow for survey participants to skip a question that they don't feel comfortable answering. And to that end, include a decline to state option to allow for this. And treat the survey with sensitivity and confidentiality. People are sharing personal information with you and need to be able to trust you with that information. Finally, collect and share this data on your Candid profile annually. That keeps your data up to date and makes it visible to a very large number of people. Okay, tips for getting staff to fill out your demographic survey. So you've designed this excellent survey. You've made your responses voluntary. You've included a decline to state option. You've made it anonymous. So how do you actually get folks to fill this out? I think one of the most important aspects to getting people to fill out a survey is helping them understand why it's so important. So figure out what your why is. A couple of reasons we share with our staff is we need it to keep the lights on. We get these questions from funders all the time. We have to be able to report on demographics so that we can continue doing the work and serving the people. And so that's one of the key reasons we need to collect this, but also having this information helps us better understand the makeup of our own staff and how we can best support them. It's also really important to make it clear that you're not trying to use this information to identify your staff, and remind them that their responses are completely anonymous and there is a decline to state option for each question. In terms of logistics, give folks like a week or 2 to complete the survey. If you give them longer, I've been guilty of this where I've just like flagged it to do later and then forgotten about it. So don't give them too long to fill this out, and send frequent reminders. Make the announcement, remind them at the 1 week mark, remind them the day before the deadline, then remind them again of the day of the deadline. And one of the things that's been helpful is being prepared to extend the deadline for a few days, because inevitably you will have people who miss it, and it's great to get as close to survey completion as you can. So just build that into your process. Finally, determine how often it's feasible for you to survey your staff. If you do so too frequently, it'll lead to survey fatigue, and not often enough means you have stale data. So we recommend surveying your staff once a year. I found that this works for us. It keeps our data fresh and gets us a gold seal of transparency each year, which is great. Benefits to sharing and collecting and sharing. Winnie shared some great benefits. I'm just gonna re-emphasize some of them here. It's really, really easy to share this data with your funders or other stakeholders. You get an easy to share link that you can just send across. It's also really great to just have all this data in one place. You can copy and paste it into grant applications. I also share that with my whole team, and they use that same data when they're filling out grant applications. So it's all this like public facing information, which is great. It also shows your commitment to equity. It helps funders find you, and having that data in the Candid profile helps strengthen the sector with insights based on that data. Thank you, Winnie. Back to you.
Thanks, Zara. Thank you for sharing all of these tips. I will move on to the next section on how to add this information to your Candid profile. We've talked a lot about the profile and how great it is, and I'm going to show you a quick couple steps on how you can go ahead and do that. So if you've never had a GuideStar account or a Candid account before, you can go on to our website, and on the top corner, you will be able to find this Create Account button. You always want to sign in or create an account first. Then you can hit this Update Nonprofit Profile button in the top bar, and that will allow you to search for your organization by name or EIN, and then fill out a very short form to validate that you are an employee of that organization. We always recommend using your organization email to sign up for an account, because with that we can very quickly approve your access to update your profile. Once you do that, you can go back and hit that same Update Nonprofit Profile button again, and your organization will show up as one that you can edit and update. And I'll now switch over to a live demo of what that would look like. So this is that page that we were just seeing on the PowerPoint. If you hit this edit button, that will take you to your landing page of your profile update tool. So as you can see, there are so many different areas of information that you could share your information on, and I'll talk about our seals of transparency in just a moment, but today we're going to focus a little bit more on the demographics section. Like Zara mentioned, a lot of different funders look at different levels of demographics, so we split it out for you so you can have the opportunity to share at each level. One that is kind of split out from the optional demographics section is leader demographics. That's just your leader and your co-leader that you can fill out as part of our gold seal of transparency. Today I'll focus a little bit more on the optional sections that include board members, senior staff, and staff, because there's a couple more moving pieces to these, and I want to be able to show you how to share that information. So I'll click into the board member section. Each of these board member, senior staff, and staff sections are set up pretty much identically. So once you fill it out once, you'll know how to continue on and fill out the rest. The how-to guide that Zara had just mentioned is linked here. If you ever need to access it, you can always find it here. And the how-to guide is set up pretty much identical to the questions that we are asking for here, so that you can, if you send out a survey, you can very easily copy and paste the responses that you get into the tool here. We first ask how many board members are in your organization. I'm going to fill out a random number for now. And then in each of the sections afterwards, we have set up race and ethnicity, gender identity 1, gender identity 2, sexual orientation, and disability status, and that we have all 5 of these questions for each of the sections. Within each, we always have an option that says we do not collect this data about our board members, so that you could still complete that section even if you choose not to collect that data. I'll now show how you can update that information. So you can hit Start Section, and then you can fill out the total number of people in your on your board that identify as such. We have a little tool down here to make sure that your data actually adds up and matches, so that you can get the cleanest data for funders to see. And again, as Zara mentioned, decline to state and unknown are always options for people who may not have filled out the survey or decided that they don't want to share that data. And that is completely okay, because some of this is very personal information that people don't feel like sharing, but that should not get in the way of you being able to share that data with funders and allowing them to see what your organization looks like. Now you can save and then move on to the next one. And again, it's kind of set up in exactly the same way, where you enter in a number for each of the categories. Clearly did my math wrong here. So, and then it matches your totals, and you can save again. And once you complete all of that, you can either continue to the next section for senior staff, or go ahead and hit publish, and that will publish your data to your Candid profile. That is basically all. That's all you need to do in order to get your data in. Again, it's fairly easy. I'll switch back to our PowerPoint here and kind of talk to you a little bit more about the seals of transparency, which I know we didn't have a whole lot of time to talk about today. But at each tier of our seals of transparency, you are able to add in different levels of information. We always recommend that you get your bronze seal of transparency, even if you're just coming in to share your demographic data, because it is something that shows up on your profile, and you can also take that to put on your website or elsewhere to show that you're committed to transparency. And it's really just keeping your basic contact information up to date so that people know how to find you and what is the best way to contact you. At the silver level, we recommend you sharing program information and brand details so that people know a little bit more about what you do. And then at the gold level of transparency, we ask for financial information, leadership, and then the leadership demographic information, which is something that, again, more and more funders are looking for. And so that's part of being transparent at the gold level. Finally, at the platinum level, we ask for your metrics and showing a little bit more of your results, including your strategic plan or anything you have written up about your overall strategy and your metrics. Each of these seal tiers build on top of each other, and essentially you can earn a silver seal of transparency if you fill out both bronze and silver. It's not required to get to the demographic sections, as you can just fill out the demographic section, but we always recommend doing both so that funders can see that you're both committed to different levels of transparency as well. That's all I have for you today. I will again share some of the handy resources that we've talked about today. You can take this free Candid learning course on how to reach donors using your free Candid profile that will cover a little bit more about the rest of the profile that we didn't get a chance to do today. And then the help guide that we've referenced a couple times, it's here. It's also in the handouts that are attached to this webinar and easily findable on candid.org as well. If you have any questions about your profile, you're always welcome to email us at support@candid.org. And that's all we have for you today. Any questions?
We do have some questions. Well, the first one is kind of a simple one to make sure we get out there. Is it free to claim the Candid profile?
Yes, it is absolutely free to claim your Candid profile and update your information.
Okay, awesome. And we know that we have different resources, different classes that people can take if you go to learning.candid.org for resources on how to, basically we have recordings, we have self-paced, and we also have live classes around how to claim your profile and then build it up. So just so people know that, I think you just put a couple on the screen and we can probably drop some in chat as well. Just a question for Zahra. How often does Candid survey their staff?
We usually survey our staff. Well, we survey our staff, senior leaders, CEO, and board once a year.
Okay. And do you feel like, because I'm nosy, so now I'm just asking for myself, but do you feel like does it feel sort of resistant or like it's an issue?
So we get a really good survey completion rate, but I will say that we have to remind people a lot. So don't be shy of sending lots of reminders. And also, I get everyone I know to remind their coworkers, like, hey, has your team filled it out? So people do need reminders, but we do have a really good survey completion rate.
Yeah, I will say as one of those staff, it's usually not a matter of not wanting to. It's more like, oh yeah, that. So reminders
Yeah.
are very good. And I just wanna I answered the question, so it went away, and I could probably get it back. But someone mentioned that their organization is in a place that is not very BIPOC, very small BIPOC community percentage, and that their board sort of reflects that. So they feel like it looks like they don't care about diversity, but they do. I don't think that's the case. And that's what I believe it was Kathleen. I responded that this is not like to call out people around what they're not doing or what they're doing. It is reflective of what you are. And if I read your profile and I see where you are, who you're serving, your impact, what you do, I'm not going to suddenly say, they don't care about diversity if you're in a place that isn't that diverse. So I don't think that's what we're collecting the information for. It's data, it's information. So I don't think anyone should feel like this is like an accusatory thing or we're looking for something in particular. I think that you tell us what's going on for you and we get to see it. I don't know if anyone else wants to respond to that, but I think it's important to feel like it's data and it's information and it's not a judgment, honestly.
Yeah, Yvonne, I'll jump in and say a little bit more about that as well. I do think that, well, first of all, race and ethnicity is not the only measurement of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that is the reason why we have so many different questions around it. So, there's a lot of different ways to show how you're representing the community that you serve. Alongside this, we also have a section about equity strategies. If you are committed to your equity in many different ways, you can talk a little bit more about how you're committed to that. And then other than that, you're also always welcome to share your narrative on your profile in written form, because people are seeing you as a holistic organization. These are data points. These are not a judgment call of who you are as an organization. So there are many different ways that you can choose to represent yourself. And I would love that, I don't want anybody to get hung up on the fact that their organization makeup might look different than others or might not look like how they ideally think something should look like. It's really about, who you are, who are you serving, and what you're trying to do and what kind of impact you're trying to make, which is why it's so great to see it in a holistic profile that shows all of that and not just pulling out the section about your only one piece of the demographic DEI information.
Absolutely. Thank you for adding that because we're looking at a whole entire organization and then we're looking at sectors, we're looking at geography. There's so many things. It would be strange to try to say there is an ideal because it just can't be. Brooke had a question. When you say leadership, are you referring to only the executive director, the senior leadership team, or board and ED leaders?
That's a great question. When we say leadership, we mean your CEO or your chair, however that is defined, or executive director, the one person that is at the head of your organization, or if there's like a co-director or a co-ED, those two of the people who are running your organizations will be part of that. Everyone else, if it's a leadership team, that would probably fall under your senior staff.
Thank you so much. We have a couple of international organizations on, so there's a couple of questions. I'll just read Dawn's. We are an international organization. Is there a way on Candid to communicate that the demographic provided are either US only or global?
We do have a notes from the nonprofit section, and that would be the best way. That shows up right under your mission statement for you to share any notes you have about the makeup of your organization or the location or any of that. So you can definitely write it in there.
Oh, and you know what? This is probably the question I should have asked a little higher up. Is Candid a national/international platform, or is it US specific? And that's good to know. We're pretty much looking at US nonprofits on our Candid nonprofit profiles. Is that right, Winnie?
Yes. You have to have an EIN as of right now to be able to have a profile. And if you do international work, but you are based in the US, you can still share your information with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then we wanted to know about the shareable full profile link. Is that something that you were going to show us, Winnie, already, or
Yeah,
how does
sure. I
that work?
can go ahead and show you. Let me pull that up. So coming back to here, I'll go ahead and actually show you Candid's. I'll go to the edit section. As you can see up there, there's update, which we covered, publish, which is making sure that you double check your terms as you publish your information in your profile. And then finally, you get your benefits. Within this section, we will down here, there's many different things that you can do. You can get some seal images, and you can also paste your seal on your website. And then here is a link or an option to share your full profile, and you can hit this button, get full profile link, for a special link to copy and paste and share with any funders, anyone you'd like. You can also preview it and see your full profile with this button below it as well.
Brooke says 98% of our work is powered by volunteers. Should we collect this data and volunteers also, on volunteers? And also, is there a place on your profile to include it?
We unfortunately don't currently have a place to collect that information for volunteers. Staff is kind of the broadest level that we go to. But you're always welcome to share that in the way that you describe your programs in your program level of information, or as I mentioned earlier, in that notes from your nonprofit section, where you can talk more about the makeup of that. We also have metrics where you can list, if you have a broad group of volunteers who are helping a lot of people, that might be something that you want to consider putting in there as well.
So yeah, I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and our speakers um, for giving such great information. This is recorded, as we mentioned, so you will be able to kind of go back to it if there's anything that you feel like you didn't get. Just want to thank Winnie and Sarah for sharing, and everyone in the background for kind of holding us up. And that's it for today. And thanks again for everyone coming on. If you enjoyed this webinar, we hope you'll join us again soon.